Hi there, this is Heather of Shutterbug 101. Today we'll be going over the Nikon D7500 walkthrough. We'll also be going over a review of the Nikon 85mm 1.8G lens versus the Tamron 85mm 1.8. Let's get started. I didn't find much of a focusing difference when using these lenses. The quality is going to be pretty much the same. The biggest differences I found were the difference in bokeh, which is that nice blurry background versus sharp foreground, that whole transition. I did find that in the Nikon, it was actually giving me a more sharp transition throughout than it was on the Tamron, which was giving me more smoothness. For me personally, I like the look of the Tamron more, but it all depends on preference when it comes to looks. So when it comes to that, if you like to have a little bit more sharpness than you do the bokeh, for me, I love bokeh. So I love that nice blurry background, sharp foreground. You know, after I do the review here, you'll actually see side-by-side representations of each photo that I took with the Nikon and the Tamron. So, you know, take a close look at those, make the judgment for yourself. But personally, when it came to how the pictures came out, I almost preferred the Tamron. Now, I will say that the Nikon is much lighter than the Tamron. As you can see, there is going to be a bit of a size difference between the two. The Tamron is going to be bigger, just by a bit, but for me it was actually a little bit heftier. I don't know if that's because of the material that it's made out of. Nikon seems to be more of a, it's not plastic, but it has that sort of feeling, that composite for a lighter material, versus Tamron, it's actually metal. So naturally, I feel like that's probably why it gets its heftiness there. There is a difference on the physical body of these lenses. So on the Nikon lens itself, you do only have one switch here. And what this switch is, and of course, it's going to be your focusing switch. So you have the M, which is going to be manual focus, and then you have M/A, which is going to be a manual/autofocus combo, which would allow you to either just use autofocus, or after you've autofocused, be able to fine tune with the ring here to get more of a manual focus after it autofocuses and gives its recommendation. On the Tamron, you will find that it has two switches. The switch farthest to the right is going to be the same switch that you'll find on the Nikon, autofocus versus manual focus. And of course, you do have the focus ring here. And then of course, the button on the left is going to be for vibration control. So this one does have stabilization that you can turn on or off. The only reason that you would ever really want to turn stabilization off is if you have this camera on a tripod, where the tripod is now doing the stabilizing instead of the camera stabilizing for your body shake. So it is something to keep in mind, that the Tamron does have the stabilization while the Nikon does not. If that's kind of a deal breaker for you, there you go. I'm sure that is also what adds to the weight of the Tamron lens, is that it does have the stabilizer inside versus the Nikon, which doesn't. But either way, you know, I'm gonna let you guys kind of do the judgment there. I feel like in most situations, because I like the look of the bokeh more, I do like the look of the Tamron, so the little bit of extra weight there, I feel that I could easily put up with, because the weight difference is not immensely different. You can feel the difference if you hold one in each hand. And then when you also consider the price difference, which typically Tamron is usually a lower price than Nikon lenses are. Typically Tamron lenses are a little bit more inexpensive than the name brand. But because of the stabilizer, and I feel like it's the durability feature of it, there is about a $300 difference, making the Tamron actually more expensive than the Tamron, which for me, I feel like I can see that difference. Again, it's up to you, it's up to your preference. If you still feel like you want a Nikon lens for your Nikon camera, no one is going to, you know, give you a hard time about that. But if you do take a look at the pictures and you go, okay, I do see a difference there, I do like how the Tamron looks, it may be worth that extra $300 for you to get some excellent portrait work. Because just so you know, if you didn't already, the 85mm is the portrait lens to get. Now that I've done my review of the two 85mm lenses, I'm going to go ahead and give you some information on the Nikon D7500, providing some video and photo samples from the camera itself and the two 85mm lenses. Then we'll go ahead and get started on the walkthrough. The Nikon D7500 is a 21 megapixel crop sensor DSLR camera with 51 focus points and a tilting touch LCD screen. It has a continuous drive of 8 frames per second, shoots 4K video up to 30 frames, has a microphone and headphone port, and built-in Wi-Fi for transferring images to a smart device. This camera also is weather sealed, has an optional GPS ability, and is a great step out of the D3000 and D5000 lines toward a camera that overall feels more professional but is still easy to use. Today we'll be going over the buttons, doors, and menus to help you navigate around this camera a little bit easier. Now getting started on the D7500. I did find that this camera was fairly easy to use. My biggest complaint about this camera is probably the screen. I feel like if it was a articulating screen, it may have been easier for me to use, but for me, even the tilting did not help me very much. Out there taking pictures in the light, it's fine because you can use your viewfinder, but if you're doing video, you have to use the screen, which I don't know if maybe I didn't lighten the screen enough and maybe it's just me, but I found the screen extremely difficult to see in the daylight, even when tilting it. So do be aware of that if you're going to be attempting to do video. Daylight can be very hard to see the screen on this guy. But other than that, this camera was pretty darn fantastic. I was really happy with the quality overall. So we'll go ahead and start with the front of the body here. So this button here, of course, is going to be for removing the lens. This guy is going to have a little dot here, which is going to be very similar to the Nikon lenses. You're going to line up the dot with the dot. There we go. And then just turn. Now typically if you're putting a lens on the camera, you want to listen for the click. Because this is a cap, it's not going to have a click sound, so no worries on that. We do have a FN2 and FN1 button here, which are going to be function buttons. That's what the FN stands for. These are going to be shortcut buttons that you can program. Currently on the camera itself, right out of the box, it looks like the FN2 button is picking the surface area, which is going to give you the DX or 1.3 times, which gives you a little bit more distance. Personally, I would just keep it in DX. I wouldn't play with that. I would probably reprogram this to be something else because personally I would never change it off of the DX. This button is not currently programmed. Also on the front of the camera, you'll see that we have a little light here. This light here is going to be your autofocus assist lamp, which is going to assist in any situation where the subject's too dark, doesn't have enough detail, where it can shine out a light and actually help you focus in when it can't do it by itself. We also have a infrared sensor here, so you can use a wireless remote. And we do have an adjustment knob here to help change either shutter speed or aperture. On the side of the camera here, we do have our card slot, which of course only goes in one way. If we look there, it says push to eject, and there's a little symbol of a card with the corner cut off, which of course SD cards do have one missing corner, so it's letting you know exactly what way to put it into the camera with a little arrow there. So pretty foolproof, and it is spring loaded. That's why it does say push to eject, so that is very important to know. The other side of the camera here, we do have a few more doors. It is telling us that we do have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on this camera, so that is nice to know. Actually, I'm going to start over here first before we open those doors. So over here, we do have our flash button here, which will pop the flash up in times where you want to use it. I do believe that in auto mode it may pop up by itself, but in your manual modes, if you wanted to use your flash, all you have to do is hit the flash button and it pops it right on up for you. We have your bracketing button, so if you would like to turn on bracketing, which will take so many pictures lighter, so many pictures darker, and then one that it recommends in hard lighting situations. We have your autofocus switch here, which I know that I went over the 85mm lenses. Both have the autofocus manual focus switch, very similar to what this has here, where you have manual focus versus autofocus. Now, something to keep in mind is that not all lenses have that ability where it has the switch on it. So if that's the case, then you have your switch on the camera itself. This button here is going to allow you to change your autofocus area, where the camera autofocuses, and your autofocus mode, how the camera autofocuses, whether the subject is still moving, or if you want the camera to decide. If you do want to know more about your autofocus modes and areas, go ahead and hit the playlist after this video is done, which will cover some tips and tricks videos and some basic camera needs, which I do have videos on each of those options. Now we'll go ahead and cover the doors here. So as you can see, they have a mic port for a microphone. Now on this camera itself, you see this little teeny dot here? That's by our infrared sensor. That is the built-in microphone. It's also going to be on this side as well. So it's going to take sound from all around you. So it does take sound already, but if you wanted some more directive sound, or if you wanted a lapel mic or something like that, something that's going to give you better audio, you do have the means for a mic port. There's also a USB port, which will allow you to transfer pictures onto your computer. It'll also allow you to update firmware if any firmware updates come up. We have an HDMI port, which will allow you to connect your camera to a television screen, computer screen, allow you to show anything that physically is going on the screen of the camera. So you can do a slideshow of pictures from your most recent trip or event, or anything like that there. On the bottom here, we have our headphone port and our remote port here. I did say that with the infrared sensor, you can have a wireless remote. Otherwise, a wired remote option is available. And of course, your headphone port. Right at the bottom of the camera, you can see that we have our universal tripod mount screw, which will go onto any tripod. And we do have our battery door, okay, which of course tells you on the door exactly how the battery goes in, and then you just hit this little yellow lever and there we go, good to go there. Going over the top of the camera here, go over on this side, we do have our on and off switch here. If you go further past the on, it's going to make this guy light up a little bit, so you can see it in a dark environment if it's difficult to see. We're going to go ahead and skip these buttons for a moment. We're going to go over, actually I'm going to go over these buttons. This of course is going to be your shutter button, which you push halfway down and then all the way down to take a picture. Halfway down to focus, of course. The red button here is going to be for recording video. Now, unlike a lot of cameras where you can just put it any mode and this is record for any camera, you do have to put your camera into video mode here in order for it to record video. If you're up in the camera mode, which is going to be your picture taking mode, you won't be able to do any video recording, just pictures. Now, I did find when I was in the video mode that I was actually able to take pictures or video. So it's possible that you may be able to do vice versa as well. If you're in the camera mode and you go live view, that you're actually able to possibly make this so it can record. I'll have to kind of look through the menu there. But all I know is from what I used it right out of the box. We do have the ISO button here, which is going to change your image sensitivity. So you're going to hold that button down. You're going to use this rear dial here to go auto or, you know, change your ISO accordingly. For me, I'm just going to leave it on auto for now. We have the exposure button here, which is going to, come on. We do have our exposure dial, which at the moment it's not going to do anything because we don't have a lens on it. But typically you would see a bar that's going +1, +2, +3, and -1, -2, -3. Going plus numbers is going to make the scene brighter, minus numbers is going to make the scene darker. It just allows you to either lighten or darken the scene without changing any major settings. Of course, we have our hot shoe here, which unlike the pop-up flash will give us options to get an external flash to give us more direction, so you can actually bounce the light off the ceiling or a wall, or get a diffuser for it, so it does seem much more professional. It doesn't look like you're using a flash. Again, if you have questions on why you should get a flash and a diffuser, that's also going to be in my playlist at the end of this video, so give that a look. On the mode dial here, green, auto, okay, that is of course going to be your automatic mode. That is letting the camera make all of the decisions for you when it comes to taking pictures. Now, if you're new to photography, or, you know, shutter speed, aperture, ISO is pretty foreign to you, I would definitely start this camera by shooting on auto. That way you can get comfortable with the grip of the camera, where the on button is, your shutter button, just capturing images, and then getting into all the other manual settings here that we're going to go over here in a moment. It's so important that you feel comfortable shooting with your camera, or else in time you'll find that it's going to end up in the closet and you're not going to use it. So it's very important that you know that you don't have to dive into M mode, your manual mode. Because I've had too many people come to me and say, well, someone told me I have to shoot on M mode or I'm not a photographer. And it's not true. Start out by, you know, shooting in your auto mode, get comfortable, and then when you're ready to move further, you'll start working into your manual modes here, okay? So, just to show you what else is on the dial here other than your auto mode, your P mode, this is going to be program mode. This will be your first step off of auto. This is going to be a mode that is going to help you learn these new settings. So you can change shutter speed or aperture, you can change your ISO, you can change your different focus points, different focus areas, different metering modes, while the camera helps change everything else so you still get a properly exposed image. So it's helping you learn these things. It's, you know, not just throwing you in to, you know, have it learn by yourself. You have your S mode, which is going to be your shutter speed mode. This is going to control solely the shutter speed of the camera, while the camera chooses the aperture for you. You would use this mode for capturing movement, so freezing movement, showing movement. You would use your A mode, which is going to be your aperture mode, to change the aperture while the camera figures out the shutter speed for you. This is going to be for portraiture work, so I mainly used my aperture mode when taking the sample images for this video. So you get that nice blurry background, sharp foreground, or sharpness throughout the image. This is also going to be for low light environments where you need to let in as much light as possible. That is what the aperture is going to control. And then of course you have your manual mode, which is you taking full control over the camera, and the camera's only doing what you tell it to. If you're just getting into photography, don't expect to jump into manual mode anytime soon, but also don't be afraid of it if you do want to play with it a little bit. Just remember, if you do get overwhelmed, there's always going back into your auto mode, which is of course going to be your safe mode. We have our effects dial. If we dial into effects here, right, so if we're in the effects menu and we hit this dial here, it'll allow us to actually pick different effects. So you have the toy camera effect, you have the miniature effect. Selective color is probably my favorite option on here to play with, just to have a little bit of fun. This will allow you to pick a specific color out and have the rest of the photo be black and white, which you can also do in editing, but hey, if you got bored and you wanted to try something new, it may be an option for you. We do have silhouette, high key, low key, night vision, super vivid, pop, and then back to photo illustration, of course. So all these different effects you can play with on your camera. Do keep in mind, if you're shooting in RAW, it will not save the effect. It's just going to capture the image for you. These will only save in JPEG. Then you have your U1, U2 spots, which is going to be your user 1, user 2. These are going to be extremely helpful if you're shooting in a studio setting environment where your lighting is going to generally be the same. So if you take pictures of jewelry for Etsy or something like that, and you find the perfect settings for your camera, you can actually save them to one of these spots. So if you go out and you take pictures of your friends, or you go on vacation with your camera, and you come back and you want to take more pictures using your studio setup, then you just have to dial into U1 or U2 and it's saved it for you. You have your scene mode here, which is going to be automatic, but you're going to direct the camera, telling it exactly what you're taking pictures of. So you have portrait, you have landscape, child, sports, close-up, night portrait, night landscape, party indoor. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of these that you can play with. But keep in mind, the camera is doing all of the controlling for you. You're just telling it, okay, you can take the picture however you want as long as it comes out, but no, I'm taking a picture of a person, or I'm taking pictures of sports, or I'm taking a picture of a sunset. And it's going to narrow its options down to those specific settings that it has and be able to get you a good shot. This, of course, is going to be automatic, no flash, but at that point, you might as well shoot in your P mode, because then you'll have the option to use flash if you would like and have a little bit more control over your settings. We do have a dial here around our mode dial, which if you just hold this button down and turn it, it allows you to see all of our different options here. So we have like a timer mode, our quiet mode, we have continuous high versus continuous low, for multiple pictures being taken when you hit and hold the shutter button, and then you have S for single shot, which will take one picture when you click and hold the shutter button down. Getting to the back of the camera here, I'm going to leave the mode dial on P mode because it's actually going to give you more options in the menu when we do go over it than it will on auto. So if you're not seeing if you're not seeing everything that I'm seeing, or if you're not seeing everything I'm showing in this video on your camera, make sure that you check your dial. So going over the buttons here, we'll go over the menu last. We have our playback button, which is going to show whatever pictures are on the card. Naturally, I don't have a card in here, so it's not going to show anything. And we have your trash can, which is going to allow you to delete pictures. We have our auto exposure lock and our auto focus lock. This is for back button autofocus, or if you want to lock in your exposure, you're going to use this button here and then take the shot. Again, we have another adjustment dial. We have front and back. Just depends on the settings that you would like to change. We have our lock button here. That's what the L is for. So this allows you to lock up your settings here. So if you do accidentally hit a button, it shouldn't change any settings for you. We have our directional pad, which is going to go ahead and move throughout the menu or anything like that. And then you have your OK confirmation button. We have our little I button here, which is kind of a little quick menu to be able to access certain things. So you have like custom control assignment. Oops. Come on. Choose image area, set picture control, which is going to be its display of color. You have active D-lighting, which I would personally keep off. Long exposure noise reduction. If you're going to edit your images, I would go ahead and keep that off so you have a little bit more control. Otherwise, if you're shooting in JPEG, go ahead and keep it on. It'll take just a little bit longer to get to the next shot if you're doing long exposures. You have high ISO noise reduction. I would just keep that on normal. And you have remote control mode. If you were to use the wireless remote control, you would turn that on. Of course, we've gone over our video versus photo mode here. And then the LV is going to be our live view. So if you hit this button, it's actually going to give you a live view through the screen rather than viewing through the viewfinder here. Now do keep in mind, to shoot video, it does need to be in live view mode. You can't shoot a video using the viewfinder. We're going to go ahead and start at the bottom here. Info is going to give us a display on the screen, which will give you the mode that you're in. Typically your shutter speed is going to be listed here, your aperture here, there's your battery level, your ISO, your white balance, again your picture control, so how the color is displayed. We have this one here, which is going to display what this dial says here. We have kind of the crop image, which you always want to be DX. We have your focus area where it's focusing. We have your image quality, which is going to be raw. And then this would display how many pictures you have left to take on your card, but because I don't have a card in there, it's displaying E for empty. We do have where you can change your metering mode, but because I don't have a lens on it, it won't give me those options at the moment. So if you want to change it from evaluative metering to center metering to spot metering, again, those are also listed in a separate video if you want to learn more about those, if you're unfamiliar with what metering does or how it works. But you just click and hold this button along with either the dial here, or you should be able to move along and change it with the directional pad. This one's going to be for quality, so you do image size versus image quality. If you're shooting on JPEG, you always want it to be large format, so keep that in mind. This is going to change your white balance here, so if you click and hold that, honestly, I would just keep your white balance on auto unless you're shooting in a very controlled lit environment where you want to control exactly what the temperature should be. That's something to kind of go over, you know, probably a later date. Just keep in mind that white balance is right here. Of course, these are to when you're viewing pictures with this button here. You can zoom into pictures, zoom out of pictures to see if it's really in focus or see more detail or anything like that. And of course, keep in mind that this is also touchscreen. Now we're going to go ahead and get into the menu. Okay, so as you can see, as part of the menu, we do have all of these tabs on the side here. So the first one here is going to be your playback menu. That's referring to this button here, going over the pictures that you've already taken. So you can delete pictures, you can create new folders, you can rotate, you can do a slideshow. So everything revolving around pictures you've already taken. This is where you're going to send it to a smart device via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. The next tab here we have is our photo shooting menu. Here you can actually reset the photo shooting menu. So if you're playing with stuff and you're like, okay, I don't know what I did, but my camera's doing something funny, you can always just go and reset it. Your storage folder, you can name your files. Your flash control, that's mainly going to be for an external flash. Your image area, which again, want to try and keep it DX. Image quality, RAW, JPEG, or JPEG and RAW. We have your ISO sensitivity settings, so if you're just learning your shutter speed and your aperture, this is a good way to set a limit on auto ISO, because you can tell the camera, you know, only choose between ISO 100 and 6400. Don't go above that, because I believe this camera can go up to like 25,000 ISO, which is just, for most cases, not necessary. Again, you have your white balance, the picture control. A lot of these are available in, you know, these buttons here or on the outside of your camera, so nothing I would worry about too much. Color, color space, you always want to keep sRGB. Again, active delighting I would just keep off. We have your flicker reduction, vignette control, your remote control, multiple exposure, which again is the bracketing, which is the button in front. That pretty much covers the photo shooting menu. The movie shooting menu is actually going to be extremely similar. The only difference is you're choosing your frame rate or your video quality, HD versus 4K. You know, the movie file type, which is more common is going to be the MOV these days with the Nikon. So, you know, it's pretty much going to be the same as the shooting menu. But as you can see, a lot of the settings are on the outside of the camera, so you're very rarely going to go into the menu itself. Now, the custom setting menu, this is probably the one that you will find yourself in the most. Again, you can reset your custom settings if you have an issue. We're just going to go right into the top here. So A is going to be your autofocus. So you have your AFC versus AFS priority selection, which is autofocus continuous versus autofocus single. Focus tracking with lock on. Number of focus points, how many you want to use, if you want to use the full 51 or if you want to use less. You have your autofocus activation, and then it goes the built-in autofocus assist illuminator, which is that light up in front, just a fancy way of saying it. So going into B here, it's going to be kind of metering and exposure. So you have your ISO sensitivity value, 1/3 is fine, don't change that. Matrix metering versus set to weighted area. Then of course you have your timers or auto exposure lock. You know, so you'll find that you won't actually change a lot of these. They're just there if you needed to change them. Your continuous low, which is going to be this guy up here, that shooting speed is going to be 3 versus the continuous high is going to be 8. Max continuous release. Viewfinder grid display, if you want to see the grid through the viewfinder. LCD illumination, so that may have been my issue here, is that maybe I didn't have that on when I was doing the video. So something to keep in mind, that it's possible that you have to turn that on. You have bracketing and flash settings here. Your custom control assignment to control like those function buttons up front. Your OK button. You can even use like different directions on this dial pad to customize and do certain settings when you push to the right, to the left, up, down, that sort of thing. And of course we're back into some movie, and then we're back into some movie options here. So now you may say, Heather, you're going through this awfully fast and you're not telling me what a lot of these are. And that's because you're not going to change a lot of these settings. A lot of these settings you're going to change on the outside of the camera, like on a regular basis. So if you really want to know about something specific where you go, wait a minute, I heard about this, or wait, I want to know more about this, let me know in the comments below and I'll go more in detail. I just don't want to overcomplicate things on this video. The whole point is doing a walkthrough of, you know, the basics and knowing what you could be changing on a regular basis. But if there is something that you're like, hey, I know somebody said I need this for the specific job I'm doing, I'd be happy to help you through it, or happy to give you more tips and tricks on this camera. Just let me know. Anyway, the next tab here is going to be your setup menu. Okay, so top option is going to be formatting your memory card. And a lot of people don't realize what formatting your memory card means. What that means is it permanently erases all the data, all the pictures, everything on there back to brand new. Okay? The reason you would want to do that is after you do a job, after you get back from vacation, you back up your pictures to your computer. I cannot say this enough. You have to back up your pictures to your computer before you format, because then you will lose your pictures forever. So once you make sure that they're backed up, you put it in the camera, you format it, it's nice and clear, it keeps it nice and healthy. If you just go through and you just use the trash can button over and over and over again through every job, when you use the trash can, it just deletes the visible file. It doesn't delete the actual data behind the file. It just makes it so you can overwrite it. And when you overwrite a file so many times, it can actually cause corruption. It can cause your card to lock up. It can cause you to lose future memories. So for the case that you want to keep your card working healthy for as long as possible and make sure you don't lose any future images, formatting your card every now and then is very important. Also, there is a little shortcut here. You see the little red symbol up here and the red symbol here next to the trash can and the record button. If you hold these at the same time, it will actually format your card as well. But you have to hold them at the exact same time for a few moments. You have save user settings, which is the U1, U2, reset them, the language, the time zone and date, your monitor brightness. So again, I probably could have changed this in order to help me out. Your information display, clean image sensor, which all that does is kind of shakes the sensor a little bit to knock off any dust. If you are seeing spots on your pictures, you will need to take your camera in to get the sensor clean. Do not attempt to do it yourself because your sensor is the heart of your camera, and it's like doing open heart surgery. You don't want to go poking and prodding where you shouldn't. Which is exactly what the lock mirror up for cleaning is for. That's going to be for the people that are going to clean your sensor. Believe me, do not try and do it yourself. It's not worth it. See, image comment, you can turn on and off the beep for focusing, your touch controls if you want to touch the, turn those on or off on the screen, flash warning if it, it'll tell you if it feels like it needs flash, your HDMI, your location data, airplane mode, yes, because this does send out a Wi-Fi signal, you can put this into airplane mode. It can help save battery. I have not proven it with this model, but I know that with other manufacturers like Sony, if you put it on airplane mode, it will save the battery. So hey, if you don't plan on sending your pictures over to your smart device, for a couple days or even a couple hours, and you just want to take a chance, maybe save the battery, turn on airplane mode. You never know. This is where you're going to connect it to a smart device, use Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, your battery info, reset all settings. So if you're really at a loss and your camera's doing something funky and you can't find anyone to help you out, reset all settings. That should help fix the problem. And this is where you look at your firmware version as well. You do have a retouch menu. All of my options are grayed out because I don't have any pictures on the camera right now, but you can trim, you can do a retouch, you can do red eye correction, you can straighten, do distortion control. I mean, you can do a bunch of editing in the camera itself. Now for me, this is a little tiny screen for me to be doing editing on, so I would personally like to edit on my computer. But if you want to try your hand at editing on the camera, because maybe you're bored, maybe you're just looking to fiddle with something, then give it a try. You might find that you really enjoy it. And then of course we have our last little tab here, which is our My Menu tab. Now what My Menu tab is for is, well, for anything that's not on the outside of the camera that you want direct access to without having to dig through all of these, you can just add anything from here to My Menu. So all of the ones that you directly are going to change, that you want direct access to without having to look for them, you can just add to the My Menu tab and bam, it's right there where you put it. So this camera has a lot of customization options, a lot of customization tools to make this camera your own and do exactly what you want it to do and have the options where you want to have your options. If you guys have any questions about this camera, if you would like me to go over something specific in the menu over more detail, please let me know in the comments below. Maybe if you have any tips or tricks that you would like to learn more about that I don't have in my playlist already, or if you want to hear about a different camera or a different lens comparison, let me know. I'd be happy to get to those and add those to my list. Until next time, keep your eye out for inspiration, Shutterbugs. Bye.